Hello, everybody. This is my first live stream ever. Oh, got a comment already? How did that happen? Yes, it is a pretty late time to be doing a live stream. It's my first live stream. There's so much going on that I figure that I need to go live to try and get as much content out as possible. Editing videos and then filming them and then uploading, it takes such a long time. But the topic that I want to talk about is the two talking points that are coming out of China and the United States at the moment. So I might try and stay on this topic for this live stream. It's my first live stream, so we'll just take it nice and slow, and it'll only be like a 20-minute one. We'll see. When I get started, I can probably talk for hours on this topic. So there's no one here to stop me talking all night. So hopefully that doesn't happen. But the two narratives, the two talking points that are coming out of China and the United States right now. And if you guys disagree, let me know. That's what's great about a live stream is you can let me know what you think. So China's talking point, and I think words are very important. Words are extremely important when it comes to this type of Cold War that we're facing right now. Um, Words are very important, and you can read between the tea leaves what they're really getting at, what they really think is happening, which is very scary actually. So China, China's main talking point that I keep seeing them go back to continuously is all Westerners are racist. So that's the talking point that I see continuously pushed out. Obviously, they jump around different talking points. More recently, they've been attacking Trump. Chinese people hate Donald Trump at the moment. They're talking about all these different. Oh, the internet speed's a bit slow. Okay, but China keeps jumping around. And they keep it's all different talking points, and they always continuously go back to the West is racist. And on the other hand, the United States, their main talking point, and I'm open to if anyone disagrees or they think there's another talking. It's this one simple sentence: it's not the Chinese people that we have a problem with; it's the Chinese Communist Party. And that's kind of what they're trying to say here is that it's we want the Chinese people to we want to protect the Chinese people, and also they're saying that we want the Chinese people to overthrow the Communist Party. So it's kind of a complex sort of talking point. And let me know what you guys think if you think that there's another talking point. Um, so so far we have the West is racist coming out of China, and from the United States it's not the Chinese people, it's the Chinese Communist Party. Now, what is common amongst both of those? The most common thing when you're thinking about these words, and I think words and slogans are very important. I think there's a lot of people the behind the scenes that actually put this together, by the way. So the Chinese government obviously planned this, and they have people within Western countries pushing that the West is racist. In the United States, people continuously try to push, oh, look, we're trying to protect the Chinese people from the Chinese Communist Party. It's almost like this Cold War democracy versus communism type narrative that the United States is pushing here. I think that's outdated. But the commonality amongst both of them is there's people who are left out of the conversation, and you guys and me, it seems like you and me are left out of the conversation because neither of those two talking points is a call to action for you or me, is it? It's a call to action to the I guess the Asian people to rise up And there's also the only real message here is that all white people are racist. So both these talking points are somewhat of a warning to people living in the West: don't be racist. So this is the way I see it. So there's no real call to action to us, and that's a little bit scary when you think about it, because what they're trying to do here is mobilize Asian people and Chinese people all against each other, and we're left out of the conversation. So I think this is an important thing to look at when we're thinking about the what they're talking about. I think it's very important, this talking points coming out of the United States and China. So one thing I've noticed recently in Australia is the CCP, since 2018, they have stopped yeah, well, that's an interesting thing. The CCP has stopped talking to the Australian politicians. We've been put in a diplomatic freeze since 2018, and that's also a message as well, that we're not really that relevant. The politicians aren't really that relevant. What that says to me is that China can come through and overtake this country without any sort of diplomatic relations with the Australian government. Since 2018, early 2018, late 2017, we've been in a diplomatic freeze with China, and it took until, I would dare say, early 2019 for the Australian media and Australian politicians to wake up to that fact. When, if you go all the way back to, say, 2012, when they started building those artificial islands in the South China Sea, and then 2014, they weaponized them. They started putting military bases on there, even though they were told not to. They told us that they were not going to. They promised us that they wouldn't. Next thing you know, the Australian government did nothing. And if you look at this channel, then 2014, what I did was I realized that we were in so much trouble. So by 2015, that's when I started uploading videos. Yeah, so what do you guys think about these two talking points? I think when we go back in history and we look at these two talking points, it's going to be very, very important. When do you realize what communism is? When do they realize? When did the Australian government realize that they were dealing with a dictatorship? Yeah, I think even today the rhetoric is fired up in Australia, and the problem is there's a lot of rhetoric, but there's not a lot of action. You see the media talking, you see a lot of people talking, but you don't see any action really being taken. So both of these two talking points, the West is racist, and it's not the Chinese people, it's the Chinese Communist Party. Both of these talking points are designed to destabilize the governments in each country. So in the United States, what China's really doing there is they're trying to say that the United States is racist, and to try and rise, make all the Asians within the United States rise up against them. And to some extent, if you have a look on the internet, you can see so many large YouTubers with huge followings that for years have been talking about how racist the United States is, and how to some extent, Donald Trump's bad, and it's a very divided country. If anything, when I look at so that's the two strategies, and the United States, they're trying to obviously overthrow the CCP, and that's the whole point of both of these talking points. I think it's so important to recognize this. Yeah, Yeah, well, there's the military. There's the military Braveheart. There's the naval aspect, which is yeah, and we have 200. And part of yeah, that's Marcus. You bring up a good point. Uh, I think it's a very good point because since 9/11, what have we done? We have continuously hated on Muslims, uh, and we have 220 Muslims on our doorstep, uh, and they're projected to be the fifth largest economy in the world soon. And all China has to do is, pull the rug from underneath our economy and start trading more with Indonesia. Since all of this, we went through a mining boom. Australia hasn't really done too much. Hugh White, in his book, but he also, before he wrote How to Defend Australia in 2019, he has been saying publicly that we needed to put together as many university students as possible and send them off to Indonesia to learn Bahasa Indonesia and learn the culture, and that will be our future diplomats. But the Australian government failed to do that. They obviously didn't think that that was a good idea. When in the United States, straight after the Cold War, what they did was they started sending some of their best and brightest to China to learn Mandarin. And some of those best and brightest are now on Fox News, uh, and a lot of them speak Mandarin, and a lot of them are in the intelligence agencies in the United States. The United States is always ahead of the curve, but it seems like Australia doesn't really have a very good plan. Lately, actually, yeah, we haven't heard anything from Indonesia either, which is a little bit scary as well because, um, yeah, apart from when recently it's Katuna Island off Indonesia. The Chinese, they, as you guys are probably aware, I'm not saying anything new here. China has a massive population, and when they took the South China Sea, the Nine Dash Line, they started kicking all of the third world countries out so they can fish, right? And during that time, they were just fishing out the sea, and it seems like they've fished out the sea already because they were recently off an island of Katuna, north of Indonesia, which was inside Indonesia's waters, and fishing inside their waters. And Indonesia, they do have a they're projected to be the fifth largest economy, but the problem is they do have a low GDP per capita. So overwhelmingly, it's still a poor country. Um, yeah, yeah. There's a lot going on with the virus at the moment, and we've effectively, yeah, dusk. Yeah, we've effectively spent future generations prosperity right now. We've literally just thrown it out the window just for this virus at the moment, which is not it's not very nice actually. But yeah, I want to go back to the two talking points. I think this is really important to grasp is that um, when you're thinking about the two talking points coming out of the United States and China, neither of those two talking points are a call to action for us. It's pretty much we're left out of the conversation, and that tells me that both our both our governments, the Australian government and the United States, don't think that we are relevant to this Cold War. So maybe it's hubris on the part of the United States. They just think that they're going to put a bit of pressure on China's economy and they're going to overthrow the government for us. Uh, yes, burning the midnight oil. This is part of the deal. This is my first live stream, so I thought I would do it at a time where there's not too many people on. So uh, I feel like it would be better. It would be a little bit more, just a few people, and the internet's better late at night as well. So yeah, so I think it's a bit of hubris on the United States part. They think that China's going to the Chinese people are going to overthrow their own government, but I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that it's a bit, yeah, it's complex. It's complex. The United States is definitely on the decline. And then Australia's in a little bit of trouble. The most frustrating thing when you look at Australia, it's as if we didn't wake up until it was too late. It's shocking. It's shocking that, and it seems like the politicians don't listen to the intelligence community, because the intelligence community, or neither does the media. They've been talking about this for quite a long time. They've been talking about how much of a threat China is, how many threats we have on our doorstep, and part of the problem is that it seems like Australia has gone from a democracy into more of a moneyed aristocracy, if I pronounce that correctly. So it's more like we have the media that try, and the lobbyists in the politicians, and the wealthiest people find their way into politics, and the people who are backed by wealthy people find their way into politics. It just doesn't seem like we really are a democracy. And if we want to, the politicians are mostly just interested in making money for themselves, which is, and the lobbyists that give them jobs when they finish. And that plays perfectly into China's hands, because that's what China wants to do. And I guess that's part of the reason why it takes for us. I know I'm drifting back off these two. I really do think that it's really important, these two talking points. If you're just logging in now, these two talking points are very important, I think, when we try to understand what is going on, because as just lay Aussies that or American people, we don't really know what goes on behind the scenes in either of these administrations. We don't know what the CCP is doing behind the scenes. We don't know what United States or Australia is doing. But what we need to do is be able to read between the lines. And when the talking points are this, and we're left out of the conversation, what we're doing is, yes, Adam, that is correct. Yeah, and up the top, someone talked about there's no industry left. Well, basic economics tells you that if you have no unions, part of the problem is basic economics. The unions effectively played a big part in our industry going offshore. That's a conversation that not many people are willing to talk about. We had all these great opportunities, but I understand the CFMEU with it's unsafe working in it's unsafe working in construction. I totally understand that union, but there's a lot of other unions that don't really, they shouldn't really be there, which is a big issue, and that's part of the reason why so many of our industries have gone offshore. We would have a lot of warehouses that, and actually, I looked into it, and there was quite a few medical suppliers. There's factories all over Sydney, and these factories were making medical supplies for our hospitals. And what happened was the unions. One of them. There's quite a few of them that I found, and quite a few of them they left because the unions got their hands into them. So I think it was that's quite disappointing moving forward. But I just wanted to talk about those two talking points. If you guys have, if you disagree with that, let me know. I still think this is the big picture, and I think it's really important to understand the big picture. Is the two talking points coming out of the United States and China, and it's so relevant. because China's obvious there to with the West is racist. I like to think of it from their point of view. What would I do if I was China? This is the best talking point to use. The West is racist. What they want is all white people, all foreigners to get out of Asia. And quite often, what they're able to do is push this propaganda that the West is racist, kick us out, and then China can do whatever they want in Asia. They can rule Asia. So I feel like it's a really good strategy. And in Australia, we have a lot of CCP backed. I believe they're CCP backed. I don't have any evidence to that effect. But what is happening is there's all of these factions starting out in Australia that are pushing that Australian people are racist. And what they're pushing is that, oh, okay, look, there's racism against Asians and Chinese people. But when you go through it and you dig deep and you have a close look, there's no evidence of any racism against Asians. And quite a few people in my group have been sharing these videos and these pages. And I've gone through and had a close look, and the only real evidence of racism against Asians was those teenage girls beating up, those two Aussie teenage girls beating up those two Asian girls down in Melbourne. That's the only evidence of anything. But in China, there's a lot of propaganda being pushed around right now that the West is racist and it's dangerous, and there's lots of that being pumped out right now. But when you look through these pages, there's no evidence of them. There's a guy called Adam Liu. I think that's how you pronounce his name. You guys would probably recognize him. He's a chef. And this chef, he's a famous chef. He won, was it Master Chef? To be honest, I don't even know, but I recognize his face. And so his background is Chinese, but he was brought up in Malaysia. And as a young child, he came to Australia. He became he won MasterChef. Adam Liu, Leiw, I believe. And I was someone in my group shared a link to him giving a speech talking about how racist Australia is and how it's so impossible for Asians to get ahead in this country. And coming from possibly a millionaire in makes sense that he would be complaining about that. But that's obviously pushing the CCP narrative. And that's the strategy to push China, for China to push the United States out, which I think is it's working so far, and it's working quite well. Recently, I've been seeing a lot of the Malaysia's interesting. I can talk about Malaysia another time, but I think also for my first live stream too, it's good to just have a one topic, which I think is important. I'd like to talk about WeChat and what Australia should be doing right now. I think when I look at the media, there's a lot of hawkish behavior in the Australian media about China, and it's all wrong in my opinion. It's as if we're still living in the past, where we believe that the enemy is so far away, and we're so far away, and that we're not under threat here at all. And so when you watch the media is constantly saying things like, "Oh, it's China," and they're talking about Taiwan and South Korea and Hong Kong and all these other threats. None of these politicians are really, the media is talking to some extent about CCP influence in Australia, but they're not putting in place any sort of policies to protect us. There's a lot of rhetoric. There's a lot of talk about China bad, but there's no policies put in place to protect us. It's all bark and no bite. I'm not seeing any action. And so all I'm seeing is the collapse of Australia in front of our eyes, and these useless politicians with no plan. It's quite stressful when you think about it. what I would like to do is I think what China did in the early days, China had to evolve. They had to adapt to the situation. They knew that the United States was the greatest power in the world, so they needed to adapt and they needed to become friends with the United States. They needed to somehow work with the United States without the United States knowing that China was their enemy. It's very sneaky. Now, the problem here is that the Australian politicians, the Australian media, they're so outdated. It's like they're living in the 70s or something. It's like they haven't. It's like wakey wakey. We're in a new Cold War, and it's very serious. They don't have any strategy. They don't have any idea what they're doing. All it is China bad. And I know a lot of you guys have been following me for the last couple of years. My rhetoric was off the charts. I was just screaming at the camera, getting angry. But the reason why I was getting angry is because the people didn't wake up. So that was why I was talking so much. I was like, wake up, wake up, wake up. Now everyone's woken up. Pull it back. Now let's put in place some policies that protect us, right? And what I would be doing right now is I would enact what I would call the Chinese yes in reverse. So this is the Chinese yes in reverse. When you deal with China, okay, if you have a problem with anything China does, what you do is you complain to them. So what will happen is in China, the Chinese policymakers will put in place, okay, they've banned Facebook, for instance. They've banned Facebook, and then obviously you go and speak to a diplomat and you say, why did you ban Facebook? Why did you ban all these, social media within China? And the Chinese diplomat or foreign minister will say, oh, it wasn't my decision, it was the other guy, and sorry about that, it's just China, this is how we do things, and then they'll continue doing what's in their best interests, and then they'll apologize for it. In Australia, we should be doing the same thing, and we flip it around and we call it the Australian yes, but we don't say it publicly. What we do is we put in place policies that protect the Australian people. And then when China complains, which we've been in a diplomatic freeze for over 2 years now, so really, who are they going to complain to? But in a Cold War, what you do is when you put a bit of pressure on China, just a little bit, policy-wise, then they eventually want to talk to you. They want to ask you questions, right? So, yeah, I've been seeing a little bit from Sky News, and when I'm talking about them being behind the 8 ball back in the 1970s, Sky News, unfortunately, is what I'm talking about. Sky News, 2GB, all of them. I've been trying to contact these guys for years. In fact, I was talking about these topics 3 years ago and trying to get in contact with these guys. And in fact, 2GB said that me wanting to, I can probably tell you guys this story if you like. You guys are talking about Sky News, and there's not too many people here, so I might as well just drift off into what you guys are talking about. Sky News, 2GB, Alan Jones. So I noticed back in, say, 2017 that Chinese New Year was a propaganda. They were using that as propaganda to push the CCP within Australia. And so what you guys need to be aware of when you're watching Sky News and 2GB is that back in 2017, I was talking about this, and there were these Aussies putting up Chinese New Year ornaments, and I went to check it out. Like, what I do is I go and check out these things. I've been like my own. No. It's not that you're wrong. Sky's on the right track now. Sky News is on the right track. 2GB is talking about it now. It's not that you're wrong. They've started the conversation. That's what we need. We need dialogue. We need the Australian people to start talking about this. But for me, they're years behind. You know what I mean? So I'm not saying that Sky News is wrong. They're actually pushing the right narrative now. It's just that it's a little bit backwards. But what happened was I could see that they were pushing the CCP propaganda in Australia through Chinese New Year. And I went past and I asked the people putting up the ornaments, are you guys going to put up an Australian flag as well? And I was abused by all these Australians for asking to put up the Australian flag. Would you believe it? And I thought that was a great story. So I tried to get hold of 2GB and tried to get on Alan Jones' show. Couldn't get on. I couldn't get on anywhere really. ABC said that it was controversial for me to go on their radio show and talk about the Australian flag. Would you believe it? But I eventually got onto 2GB, and I couldn't get on to speak to Alan Jones, but I got on to speak to a replacement of Ben Fordham. And I told him about this. And what happened was the replacement of Ben Fordham told me that asking to put up the Australian flag within Sydney, Australia, could have been deemed white supremacist. And that's the attitude of Aussies in the media that's supposed to be a conservative radio station, and still Sky News as well, just 3 years ago. So as you guys are aware of, I've covered this as well. Sydney actually started to fight back, and what Sydney did is they changed Chinese New Year. They just removed Chinese New Year, and if you notice that when Chinese New Year starts up, it's not called Chinese New Year anymore. It's called Lunar New Year, because many other countries in Asia are called, they call it Lunar New Year. So what it does, it removes that, China trying to, control Australia narrative that, yeah, that's part of the problem with the media, is that they just hype it up to try and get ad revenue. And so because of that, we've got into such a difficult situation, because we don't have people actually sitting down and thinking. We do have ASPI. We have a lot of people. We have intelligence agencies, and we have a lot of think tanks that are doing a very good job in Australia, but they don't get enough media time, and they don't put them on. Well, that's part of the problem, you see. It's like, what is the stance? Like, if I was ScoMo, I would be playing. See, I would have them. That's part of the difficulty in a democracy too, and this is part of my theory on how we're going to have to be. We could end up becoming more of an authoritarian government. I hate to say it, but this seems to be the trend on where we're going. It's because I saw our trade minister on the project that was linked in the group. If you guys are not in the group, you're missing out on all of these things. But it was linked in the group, and this the project asked our trade minister. They just tried to catch him. They tried to catch him, and they said, "Oh, why did you why are you insulting our biggest trading partner?" So the media is working against the politicians, but it would be good if somehow our politicians and our media, we had this with knowledge underneath that that what we're doing is we're fighting back against the CCP. But the media just pumps all this, oh yeah, we love China, and then our politicians just put in place all of these policies that protect us from China. And then every time China comes over and has a go at us, and they want to argue about something, what we do is we go, oh, well, I didn't put the policy in place, it was the other politician, and we send the Chinese minister around in circles, and we just keep passing it off. I call this the Chinese yes. and that's a great strategy because you never get to the bottom of what's going on in China. That's how China's been able to do so many bad things for so many years and just get away with it because they enact the Chinese yes. It's like, yes, yes, I agree. It's so bad that we put this policy in place. But in fact, what they're doing is they're doing it to negatively affect us, which is pro-China. They get criticized. If they're too negative against China, they get criticized. So it's hard for them to find a balance because the media is going to attack them on both ends, and that's only okay if you're America. If you have the largest military in the world and you're so powerful and you're so high up in the pecking order, it's okay. You can fight amongst each other. You can have the Republicans versus the Democrats and tear each other apart. It doesn't matter because you're so powerful. But a country like Australia, we can't behave that way. We'll tear ourselves apart. China will pick us off one by one and slowly tear apart the country, which they've been trying to do for quite a long time, which is very scary when you think about it. It's very scary. Gee, I've been talking for 40 minutes already. Oh yeah, thank you, Attack. Thank you for that. But yeah, I've been talking for 40 minutes already. Goes so fast. But for you guys, if you just joined, the two talking points that I wanted to talk about were the Chinese, the Chinese talking point. Yeah, it's almost 40 minutes though. I rounded it up. The Chinese talking point, which is the Westerners are racist, and the United States talking point, which is it's not the Chinese people, it's the Chinese Communist Party. I think, really, that's not good. I thought late. Yeah, so I think these two talking points are very important, and when it's good that you understand these two talking points because you and me, Australian people, we're left out of the conversation. We're totally left out of this conversation. I think we need to be aware of that. So when our media becomes all hawkish on China, we need to, you know, be aware that we're not even really part of the conversation, which means that China thinks that we're irrelevant, and so does America. I do have. There's. I want to round this. I want to round this up. Round this. This live stream off because I could probably talk forever. I want to do a live stream and talk about what we should do. What thing we should do to fight back against China, and because like when I look at the media and I look at the government, what they're doing, I've spent most of my time watching think tanks and reading books about this. So my theories 3 years ago seemed crazy, but now they've kind of come together. But I want to talk about the strategy, which I think, which could be totally wrong, which is all about WeChat. I think what we need to do is not use military. It'll be good. It'll be a good idea if we could do that. But no, I don't think we should be. I don't think we should be using any military strategies at all because that's the factory of the world up there. These guys can create anything and they can do it so fast. This is the scary thing, is that if they get that economy building ships, wow, we wouldn't be able, the supply lines in China, we wouldn't be able to keep up. We just wouldn't be able to take these guys on. But the strategy, you see, WeChat. I think WeChat is one of the biggest threats to Australia. And if I could get in the ear of one of those politicians, it will be somehow plan. I would have this talking point: ban WeChat. That would be the talking point that I would push forward. It is ban WeChat. And then the question will be, okay, well, how do we do that? And why are we banning WeChat? And then that will start up the conversation, and it'll get to the point where we realize, oh, wow, we don't have enough computer scientists. We don't have enough computer engineers. We don't have all of these people that are able to create a form of firewall around banning WeChat. We don't have these things in place. And then the conversation will be like, well, why is WeChat such a threat? Well, they're influencing our politicians. We have spies in this country that can contact the CCP directly. We got money laundering. We got all of these aspects that are going on in Australia through WeChat. And whether we can actually, we might not be capable of banning WeChat, but I'd like to do a live stream purely on WeChat because it's so in depth. And also I think that China right now's Alipay 6 months ago. I'm sure some of you guys have watched this video where I talked about Alipay and WePay and how a lot of businesses in Australia, what they're doing is they're using Alipay and WePay. That's how they're doing business. You tap on, tap off, and that has nothing to do with our system here. So China's real strategy is to put Alipay and WePay, spread it around the world. And I have a theory. There's a possibility that once the United States prints the hell out of the US dollar and the rest of the world loses faith in the US dollar, China can just plug in Alipay or WePay, and that can possibly replace it. There's a lot of limitations. It's very early on in the day, but that's where I see it going. I could be totally wrong, but these WePay and Alipay are a huge threat to the Australian people. It is a huge threat to our economy, and especially now because of what's going on. I think I'd like to do the next live stream on that topic. But yeah, this has been good. I've kind of drifted around, but maybe next time I'll just stay on one topic. No, it won't be that simple. That's why the ban WeChat slogan will be so important, because what it will do is it'll make us realize how unprepared we are. This is why I believe we're in a diplomatic freeze with China, is because they don't even need to talk to us. They just need to keep going and doing their own thing. They just need to keep at it. Just keep spreading WePay and WeChat and Alipay around Australia, continuously setting up businesses in Australia, buying certain assets that are important, spreading the Belt and Road Initiative. And next thing you know, continuously sending Chinese people that are loyal to the CCP into Australia. And then all they have to do is, once they're all here, overthrow the government. But when that happens, the government is already so far behind. This is the scary thing. The government is so far behind on what's really going on within the country. And I like a saying that I heard: good times create weak men. And that's part of the issue here, is that even 3 years ago, when I was talking about how I went down to the Apple store and I stayed out there for 11 days, the media attacked me. They never wanted to interview me. They didn't want to talk to me. All they did was wrote articles on me. And I think it still goes back to easy times create weak men. And so they were afraid to even talk about these topics, which is very scary, because what happens is we just start running out of road. And then our options start becoming more limited as we run out of yeah, I'm rambling a bit, am I? They're refreshing. But yeah, I'm a little bit all over the shop tonight. This is my first live stream. But yeah, I think it's important for us to understand, our government, and also, on this topic too, is that we have this idea that there's a one world government or there's some people behind the scenes pulling all the levers, but I don't think there is. I just think that there's people who have grabbed power and they're not really too connected. You know what I mean? They're not really so connected. And what you need to do is kind of look at them, and it's a lot of groupthink going on. I don't think that these people are controlled at all. I just think that they're all out doing their own thing, Milton Friedman style, looking out for what's important to them. And then they're all sort of going in there and they sort of like convene. You know, I don't think that they're really, there's people behind the scenes. If there were people behind the scenes pulling the strings, I wouldn't really be out here doing this. I'll just be like trying to figure out who's pulling the strings. But there's clearly no one pulling the strings. We're just a little bit lost. But yeah, I'd like to do a live stream on WeChat and what that conversation would if we put the slogan ban WeChat, what that would mean. I think that would be very, very interesting to see how that would play out in the future, talking about banning WeChat, because it's not just banning WeChat, it's the conversation that comes with it. And the conversation that comes with banning WeChat, it would be a little bit shocking to the Australian people. Then we start digging deeper on what's been happening with WeChat, what they've been doing in our country. And I like this. This is pretty good. A live stream. I'm sure a lot of you people, sometimes you might bump into me in the streets, and then we have a little chat about China, and an hour later, we've had a long discussion about China, and I feel like that's somehow the best way, is when I have those conversations with people in the street about this. And so this is probably a good way to do it. But yeah, Zoom is CCP owned, definitely. So is TikTok. Yeah. There's a lot we need to address. There's a lot we need to talk about, and there's a lot of things I'm talking about our mainstream media is not talking about. I think they're just, pushing slogans, but they're not really doing anything. I'm not seeing any real change. Like, I'm sure a lot of you guys, you see so much going on. The media's getting angry. The politicians are talking about it. But to me, I haven't seen any action. And that's where the good stuff is when there's action, right? And I'm not seeing any action from the government. The media just talks for clickbait, so they're irrelevant. They're like me. It's just me talking. But we do need something to good question. Is Telegram blocked in China? I don't know. I really don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But if they move on to Telegram, I don't think that would actually cause. I don't think a lot of Chinese would move to Telegram, and if they did, that would still be better than WeChat, right? Because my understanding is that Telegram's owned by a country in Europe. I could be wrong. I'm not sure. But with WeChat, if WeChat does something, our prime minister can send them a letter. It doesn't matter. They don't listen to us. So WeChat is this. We have this like app that is controlling people and monitoring people within our country. And it can do the worst things ever. It can pump the worst propaganda ever, and our politicians can't control it. They can't even push back against it. If Twitter or YouTube or Facebook does something bad in Australia, we send them a letter, we send them an email, we contact the United States. The United States, to some extent, will follow it up for us. But with WeChat, they don't do anything. They don't follow it up at all, because last year, is it? Okay, well, Telegram will have we have the British following us, monitoring us, but WeChat played a part in the election last year, and WeChat played a part in, I think it was when we were voting to see if gay people had the right to get married. WeChat was against it, and WeChat was pushing that. So that was kind of the CCP seeing how much political power they had. But I think WeChat is one of those things. And so in the live chat, next time I do a live stream, I might just talk about WeChat. That might be a good topic to talk about. Very good topic. But yeah, this has been fun. I think most of you guys need to go to sleep now. I need to go to sleep as well. And if you're abroad, wherever you are, it's been nice. I've enjoyed it. No, I haven't. But yeah, nice to meet you guys. I'll see you guys in the next video. Hey.